All right, well, welcome again, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for today's webinar on Apprenticeship 101 and AmeriCorps. This is the first webinar in a series of 3 webinars that we'll be hosting over the next few months in partnership with the Department of Labor Office of Apprenticeship to share with you opportunities around how AmeriCorps programs can partner with apprenticeship program models. So we're looking forward to kicking that off on today's call today. A few quick housekeeping things. We are recording this session and we will email the recording out to everyone as a follow-up to the call today. For those of you that are members of Ask, we'll also post the recording and materials on the respective base camps that you have access to. Please do utilize the chat box for any questions or comments you have throughout the session today. We also will have ample time for Q&A, and during those times you are welcome to raise your hand and we can let you know that you can unmute yourself and ask your question or provide your comment over audio as well. A quick overview of our time together today. I'm going to go over a little bit of information here as some context setting, and then we're going to turn it over to our colleagues at the Office of Apprenticeship at the Department of Labor to talk about what apprenticeships are. We'll then have some time for Q&A to ask questions about apprenticeship. And then we will hear from John Kelly, the Executive Director of Serve Colorado, to share an example of how one of their programs has combined apprenticeship with their AmeriCorps program design. And then we'll have additional time for any questions that folks may have. If you are just joining us, again, would like to invite you to say hi in the chat box with your name, your organization, and where you're joining us from. For those of you that may be new to America Service Commissions, we are the National Association of the 52 governor-designated state service commissions, which administer AmeriCorps state programs and support volunteering and service throughout the country. We provide training and technical assistance and a wide range of support services to commissions and AmeriCorps programs. I do want to refer you to a couple of resources that you'll hear us reference during the call today, so you can start looking those up, and I'll also put these links in the chat box. But one is a new report from Jobs for the Future, Next 100, and Service Year, which is a report on how AmeriCorps can leverage pre-apprenticeship program models, and then also a guide from Serve Colorado and case study on combining AmeriCorps and registered apprenticeship programs. So I encourage you to check those out. And again, we'll share those resources in the chat box as well. So before I turn it over to our colleagues at the Department of Labor, I just want to kind of remind everyone that kind of why we're having this conversation. AmeriCorps is going to be celebrating its 30th anniversary, launching later this year, that celebration. We all have known, those of us that have been operating in the AmeriCorps field for quite some time, that serving in AmeriCorps has an impact on the career development of AmeriCorps members and their kind of pathway into a career. That conversation around those career pathways, though, hasn't been as front and center in past years. And I think we're starting to have a more intentional conversation around the opportunity of how AmeriCorps is and can be a workforce strategy. And I also think that we've also had more conversation as of late around how AmeriCorps doesn't just have an impact on the community those members are serving, it also has a significant impact on the member itself, and specifically around that career pathway, career development opportunity. One thing I do want to acknowledge today is that when we're talking about workforce and apprenticeship program models, the language that is used is often around employee and employers and jobs. And for those of us that have been in the national service AmeriCorps space for many years know that that's not the language we use, right? We talk about service term, we talk about national service participant, host sites, because AmeriCorps members are not employees. They are legally defined as national service participants. So I want to acknowledge that you might hear that terminology and language today around jobs and employers, but that is not in conflict with what we do within national service and AmeriCorps. We're going to be talking about how these two worlds can collaborate and work together, even though our language might be a little bit different. So with that context, I'm going to stop sharing my slides and hand it over to Jeffrey Smith at the Department of Labor to introduce himself more and talk with us about Apprenticeship 101.
Thank you very much. So I just bring up the slide presentation now. Rachel, can you confirm that you see the first page of our presentation?
Yes, I can. Looks good.
Great, great. On behalf of the United States Department of Labor, I want to take this opportunity to thank AmeriCorps and ASC for inviting us to speak with you this afternoon. It's indeed our pleasure to do that. And we'll roll right on in with our presentation. So we're going to give you two main areas of information today. The first will be, we'll be providing you an overview of the registered apprenticeship system, what is it made up of, how is it structured, and what are the benefits that accrue from it. I will be sharing that information. And then my colleague, Randy Copeland, he will then be sharing with you a variety of information about resources that are available for apprenticeship programs and program building and connecting job seekers with apprenticeship programs. So we'll move right into, well, what is registered apprenticeship? Apprenticeship is an earn and learn model that has been time tested and proven to be able to represent a phenomenal workforce development solution. Registered apprenticeships are industry-driven, high-quality career pathways which allow employers to develop and prepare their own future talent pipeline. Allows individuals to obtain paid work experience, receiving progressive wage increases connected to classroom-based instruction, all ending, culminating with a portable, nationally recognized credential. So when we look at registered apprenticeship, there's some pretty impressive statistics that are available. As of fiscal year 22, there were 835,000 apprentices collectively throughout the United States. There are a total of 25,000 plus active registered apprenticeship programs. Just during fiscal 22, there were just over 2,400 new apprenticeship programs that were created. And the growth of new apprentices over the past decade has been an astounding 70%. Here in the Office of Apprenticeship, our mission is to promote and support the registered apprenticeship system, in turn growing opportunities for workers seeking higher skilled, higher paying jobs, while also engaging with employers that are seeking to build a qualified, diverse, and inclusive workforce. So there's 7 basic components that we talk about when we think of registered apprenticeship. The first of these is registered apprenticeship is industry-led. And that is really the foundation stone of what makes the registered apprenticeship system so effective. It is employer-driven. We are working together, employers work and identify what are the key skills that they need in-demand occupations that will allow them, if they can acquire and train that talent, to be able to be successful individual businesses contributing to the larger state, regional, and ultimately national economies. Registered apprenticeships are full-time paid work. That is vital to remember. This is not a training program where someone is coming in for, say, 4 to 6 weeks to get a very discrete set of skills. Apprenticeships are paid employment. And the way that that apprenticeship program is delivered, it's delivered through 2 basic components. The first of those are structured on the job learning and mentorship. Essentially what happens is when a new apprentice comes on, and let's say this apprentice is aspiring to become an electrician, what will occur is there will be a senior worker on or other workers on site who are already fully qualified electricians in their own rights. They will be supervisors / mentors for apprentices, whereby that allows them to engage in a knowledge transfer of the information from the senior electrician, showing firsthand on the job how the apprentice actually does and performs successfully various work processes. That on-the-job learning is connected to and enhanced by supplemental education, oftentimes referred to as related technical education, related technical instruction. That structured on-the-job learning during the course of 1 calendar year consists of 2,000 hours of paid on-the-job learning. And then there would be, that's in a time-based program. And then For that supplemental education, also for a time-based program, there would be a minimum of 144 seat hours of related instruction. That related instruction could come from a variety of sources. It could come from a community college. It could come from a technical training school. It could come from a union apprenticeship programs, joint apprenticeship and training committee. It could come from an online learning management system, or it could come from some other source or a combination of those sources, including the employer teaching directly on the job. One of the essential components of registered apprenticeship is diversity. We strive to make sure that not only the faces of our registered apprentices are diverse and representative of all the diverse communities that make up this great nation, but we also pride ourselves on having diversity of industries that are represented within the registered apprenticeship family, as well as a diversity of occupations that can be accessed and learned through the registered apprenticeship model. Registered apprenticeships also rely upon quality and safety. Safety first, obviously, by having senior skilled workers on site to guide and mentor newer apprentices. It dramatically has been shown to cut down on workplace safety concerns, in that you're having someone there who is fully seasoned and proficient on how to be mindful of safety on the job site, and they're in turn imparting the importance of that to their apprentices. And last but certainly not least, their apprentices end in a nationally recognized credential that shows that the individual that completed an apprenticeship has been deemed as fully qualified in the occupation they apprenticed within. There are three basic types of apprenticeship. We referenced the first one earlier, time-based approach. This is an approach that measures skill acquisition through an apprentice's completion of at least 2,000 hours of on-the-job learning and a minimum of 144 hours of related training and instruction per calendar year of the apprenticeship program. Apprenticeship programs can be as short as 1 year to as long as 5 to 6 years. And that overall length is determined by the complexity of the individual occupation and how long it would take someone to realistically become fully proficient within that occupation. Next, we have a competency-based model. The competency model measures skill acquisition through an apprentice's successful demonstration of acquired skills and knowledge. Let's say for a moment that I am an apprentice and Rachel is my mentor. And she wants to teach me a particular work process. She would perform that work process herself with me observing and assisting on a cycle where it would again expose me initially to what that work process looks like. She would explain all the nuances and intricacies of it. And over time, then we would collaborate together to perform that same work process. Ultimately, Rachel, as my supervisor mentor, is going to say, Jeff, I think you're ready to try this on your own. And I will then in turn be asked to perform that work process under her guidance and supervision. But she will determine have I successfully mastered that competency, and am I able to then in turn move on to learn and to focus on the next most progressively complex competency. Not surprisingly, in the hybrid model, that takes elements of both time-based and competency-based and measures an apprentice's acquisition through a combination of specific minimum numbers of hours of on-the-job learning, but also those successful demonstrations of competency. Registered apprenticeship has a proven track record of producing strong results for both employers and workers. Employers typically receive at least a 44.3% return on investment for how the investments they make in hiring, training, and paying registered apprentices. 93% of all registered apprentices continue to be employed with the business they did their apprenticeship with for at least 1 year or more after they have actually completed the program. For every $1 invested in benefits, there's a $28 return on investment there. And you'll see at the bottom, completers typically earn, this is a median wage, about $77,000 per year on average. And during the course of someone who went through an apprenticeship program over the course of their lifetime, their overall lifetime earnings average $300,000 higher than someone who did not go through a registered apprenticeship program. From the perspective of employers, there are a host of important benefits that they receive. You'll see here that they're getting, and statistics show they're getting an improved company culture, improved pipeline of skilled workers, improved employee loyalty, improved coworker productivity, reduced turnover, product or process innovation with actually how they're doing their work, reduced downtime. They're developing their future management pool, and they're also getting more on-time delivery. All of these are measures that are important for an employer and go towards their bottom line. A diverse range of industries can be accessed through the registered apprenticeship model. Historically, the bread and butter of all apprenticeships have been the building trades, construction, but we now have so many more non-traditional occupations that can be accessed utilizing the apprenticeship model. They include agriculture, healthcare, cyber IT, biotech, transportation, energy, hospitality, financial services, general information technology, critical supply chain, transportation, we mentioned, infrastructure, engineering, and last but not least, telecommunications. So what are our benefits for the career seekers? First and foremost, they are getting an earn as you learn model. They are learning and being compensated while they learn a lucrative occupation. They're avoiding student debt. The vast majority of the employers that are involved in the registered apprenticeship system are paying for the cost of that instruction that is connected with the program, or they are accessing grant funds that may be available to assist them in doing so. Job seekers gain workplace relevant skills in a field of their choice. It eases the transition between high school and the world of work. Again, they will be receiving, once they complete their program, that nationally recognized portable credential. And in many cases, they are also getting college credits that could go towards an associate's or bachelor's degree. So for an entity that wants to register a program, there are benefits there as well. By registering a program with the U.S. Department of Labor or a state apprenticeship agency, an organization will gain access to a nationwide network of expertise, our customer service and support in helping to build the apprenticeship model for a business or organization at no charge. There's funding that can be accessed and other resources from federal programs. Indeed, in many states, businesses also may qualify for tax credits when they hire new apprentices. And of course, graduates receiving that industry recognized and nationally portable credential, well, they have valuable skills that are important and employers seek out. Educators itself, as I said, many of our community colleges serve as instructional providers for apprenticeship, provides them a creative revenue stream, helps them fulfill their mission, brings them closer to their employer community and better understanding the employer's talent and skill needs. So from here, really what we would encourage you to do is explore. Get to know apprenticeship, get to know and understand the system. And in Randy's portion of the presentation, he's going to walk through with you a series of resources that'll give you access to just that information. There'll be information there to help you understand what would be involved in building a program of your own or partnering with another organization that may already run a program. Then it would give you an opportunity to sort of understand the benefits of funding and other pieces. And then at that point, it would allow you and your individual businesses or you as individual job seekers to be able to make a decision for yourself. And we hope seriously consider the benefits of the registered apprenticeship model. With that, I will turn the floor over to my distinguished colleague, Randy Copeland.
Thanks for that, Jeff. So we'll get into some of the great resources we have at the Office of Apprenticeship. Jeff, if you don't mind, next slide, please. So the Office of Apprenticeship has our apprenticeship.gov website. This site is our kind of a one-stop shop for everything apprenticeship. We pretty much keep all of our resources and information here that you would need to find more information, whether you're a career seeker, whether you're an employer, whether you're a sponsor, educator, or other training provider. Next slide, please. So one of the best resources if you're looking to start a registered apprenticeship program is on our apprenticeship.gov site. You can use our start a program function where it can walk you through all of the information that you need to know in order to start a registered apprenticeship program. You can also find out more information for the different roles, whether you, like I said before, are an educator, or if you're looking for more information about how apprenticeship can improve your diversity and inclusion efforts within your organization as well. Next slide, please. One of our most go-to tools is our Apprenticeship Finder. The Apprenticeship Finder tool is a national repository for all of our apprenticeship opportunities. This is a great way where you can kind of search by industry or by area what apprenticeship opportunities there are in your state in a specific sector. So if you take, for example, if you were looking to find out about electrician apprenticeship opportunities in the state of California, you could use this Apprenticeship Finder tool to find the exact names and data for the ones that already exist, as well as you could contact and connect with your local state apprenticeship office that could help you build out your own program. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned in the earlier slide, we have our own self-service tool to help you register your programs. So a major part of registered apprenticeship is the standards. The standards are what you use to build out a registered apprenticeship program. It there holds kind of the layout of the program, what the training piece looks like, you know, what the different competencies are that you need to be successful. And that's the building block of your apprenticeship program. So anytime that you're starting a program, you want to make sure that you get your standards together. Now we have a tool that will help you build out those standards. This tool can allow you to also contact apprenticeship staff if you need further assistance in creating maybe standards for occupations that don't exist yet as well. Next slide. So apprenticeship has a lot of funding opportunities currently. We have many grants and contracts out, and there's over $350 million of federal funding to expand the efforts in apprenticeship and diversify and create more opportunities in the DEIA space. So I would definitely encourage everyone to look at our grants page that we have on apprenticeship.gov, and also kind of stay current on grants.gov, as we often have new grants and opportunities that come out that you can kind of see the forecast on that. But some of our more topic grants that we have running now is around youth apprenticeships. We've created apprenticeship hubs. We have industry intermediaries who are working on expanding registered apprenticeship for us throughout the nation. And we also are working on our registered apprenticeship TA centers of excellence that will kind of help build out sectors with the registered apprenticeship focus. And next slide, please. So apprenticeship funding, access and resources, as I mentioned before, this is where you can access kind of our open funding opportunities through DOL, as well as a way you can connect to the Registered Apprenticeship Awardee search. That search will kind of tell you who we've already given grantees to. So instead of kind of inventing the wheel when you're trying to engage with the registered apprenticeship system, you can see who's already been awarded money to work in the same space as you and tag on to efforts and work that they already have. A lot of our grantees love to partner and are always looking for new partners to help kind of build out what their objectives of their grant funds is. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, we have registered apprenticeship in the industry intermediaries. So there are 16 industries that we're focusing on building out apprenticeship in. As Jeff mentioned before, building trades and construction was typically apprenticeship's bread and butter, but we are definitely heavy in the kind of what we call emerging industries. So this is a great example of all the different new emerging industries that we're in. As you see, we have intermediaries that are dedicated to healthcare and information technology, cybersecurity, cybersecurity, supply chain, care economy, advanced manufacturing, transportation, but you also see we still have our roots in construction as well. Next slide, please. And this is just kind of a brief overview of the open investments that we have. This is going to look very similar to how it would if you use that awardee search that I mentioned earlier. This is just kind of showing you a breakdown of the different grants opportunities that we have open right now, how much money was awarded for these grants, and what they're kind of focusing in, whether it's a sector-based approach, or if they're focusing on technical assistance, or if they're building out a particular industry. And as you see, you can definitely learn more on that open funding opportunities page. Next slide, please. On this slide, we're talking about how you can fund registered apprenticeship through WIOA. There's a lot of wraparound services that are available for registered apprentices through WIOA funding. So a lot of the on-the-job training, you can get reimbursements through WIOA funds. And you can also use WIOA funds for some of your related instruction and, more importantly, supportive services. And this is particularly important when we're talking about things like youth in apprenticeship, or diversity and inclusion in apprenticeship, because sometimes you have families that are coming from low income and they don't necessarily have the transportation or the means to childcare to complete the apprenticeship because they can't get there. So being able to tap into those WIOA funding to provide those services for our apprentice is an invaluable asset to the success of that apprentice. Next slide, please. And once again, if you're looking to kind of start your apprenticeship and you don't know where to start, we in the Office of Apprenticeship, we work almost like consultants. So we're always there to help kind of navigate the system and help people field questions, help people build out what their apprenticeship goals are, help them actually build apprenticeship programs. So here's how you can kind of use our express interest feature on our website to just kind of get the ball started and ask your general apprenticeship questions and where to start. And we have what we call apprenticeship training representatives throughout the nation that can kind of be available to you and be a resource to help walk you through those processes. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll pass it back to Jeff, but I just wanted to personally thank everyone for allowing us to speak today. I hope you guys learned something new about how you can collaborate with the Office of Apprenticeship. And I'll pass it back to Jeff to start us off with any questions that you may have from the presentation.
Thanks, Jeff. Randy, go ahead.
I'll just turn it back over to you, Rachel, and you can ask the group if they have any specific questions for Randy or myself.
Great. So before we transition to hearing about an example from the National Service and AmeriCorps field, are there any questions for Jeff and Randy about what they shared in regards to apprenticeship and all the resources that they shared? So we have a question from Brent regarding nationally recognized portable credentials. If an apprenticeship program is registered with DOL, does there need to be any additional registration process with SSA states for the credential to be accepted with employers within that particular state?
There are a couple different factors to remember there. If someone is getting their completion credential from a program that is either registered at the federal level or, say, registered in another state, oftentimes that credential will be sufficient to go into that state. The important thing to remember is every state has unique licensing requirements. For instance, in the state of Maryland, there is a statewide electrician's license that needs to be had. Favorably, one of the ways and the easiest way to get that is if somebody goes through a registered apprenticeship program and completes that program, their completion credential can be presented for them to automatically be able to get a Maryland electrician's license without having to take the electrical licensing exam. That situation also exists in Maryland for individuals who are going into heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. It's important to note that there may be local licensing requirements that while you might be coming in from the credential from out of state that will be accepted broadly, there may be some requirement that you might have to do to be in compliance with any state or county or municipal licensing requirements. So that's always an important consideration for someone who is either an apprentice or had completed a program, just to be mindful whenever you start working into a different state to make sure that you know what that state's local rules of the road are so that you're able to comply with them.
And Kayla's question, since WIOA are federal funds, is it double dipping to utilize WIOA, a federal fund, federal funding source to support AmeriCorps, which is also federally funded? And so, Jeff, I don't know if you have something to add to this, but what I would initially say, Kayla, is that AmeriCorps statute allows for other federal funds to be used as a match on your AmeriCorps grant if the other federal agency approves that. So that would be the AmeriCorps side of that. So it really would be like a determination by the Department of Labor if that is allowable to be used as match on your AmeriCorps grant. And Jeff, I don't know if you want to expand on that.
And essentially, it would be the guidance that any of our federal project officers, the grant officers would give would be the same advice that you did. Is you can't necessarily leverage one US DOL funding stream against another, because then at the end of the day, part of what you want to see is you want to see that the business has some skin in the game, that they are making an investment. So our guidance would be essentially the same, which is it is possible to leverage those funds, provided that they are from discrete and distinctly different funding streams. But again, you always refer back to whichever grant you're talking about. You refer back to your federal project officer or grant officer, just to make sure that there isn't anything from their perspective that they would be concerned about. It's always the safest bet to ask.
And I know John will address that a little bit further as he's talking as well, and how they've leveraged some resources in their state. Brent, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, sorry, I have one more question. But so going back to the slide that walked through the time-bound model, competency, and then hybrid. So although not impossible, it can be challenging to do like a 2,000-hour apprenticeship as part of national service programming. So I want to make sure I understand the competency-based model a little bit more. So in theory, say a member serving a 1,700-hour term, and through that 1,700 hours are able to meet those competency benchmarks, would that be completion of that type of model of apprenticeship?
Again, it would depend. It would depend locally on how things are structured. I know, in having come from the state of Maryland, I know in the state of Maryland that even if you master the competencies in a one-year competency-based model, say in 7 months, you are still expected to continue working for a full year during that, because again, practice makes perfect. You may now have been deemed technically proficient and have been able to perform the competencies, but the more repetition and the more you have of completing those competencies, the better off and more experienced the individual may be. So again, that's something that either at the Office of Apprenticeship or at the state level, it's just, again, mattering what are their regulations and what are they structured to do. But typically, at least in Maryland, we saw the shortest length that we had for competency model programs was 1 year. And again, it was just pegged to making sure that they had a full year's worth of that hands-on, on-the-job learning on the job, because that's where you learn and apply the best lessons to be able to be proficient.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Sure.
Well, I don't see any other questions right now, so I think we'll move on and invite John Kelly from Surf, Colorado, to talk about their experience combining AmeriCorps with a registered apprenticeship program. So I'm going to go ahead, John, and let you introduce yourself further, and let me know as you would like me to advance your slides.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And it's great to be on the call with everyone. Thank you to Ask for organizing, and Jeff and Randy for their presentation. I'm going to try not to repeat. I have a few slides that overlap, so I'm going to try not to repeat all the good stuff that they already shared. So, maybe I could start with the first slide and how and why we got into exploring utilizing registered apprenticeships. And it really came from us as part of our diversity, equity, and inclusion priority. And we formed a member advisory committee and had a number of discussions around the value proposition of AmeriCorps. And a couple of big points came out of that. One is that we needed to be providing a just living package of benefits to our members. And the other is that members were interested in their service experience leading to something more and afterwards, a step on a pathway, and as well as recognizing the impact of the work that they would be doing as part of their AmeriCorps time, and the importance and alignment to the needs of the state. And so, with that, we were able to secure some support from the Schultz Family Foundation, National Service Challenge, as well as the Ballmer Group, and really helped us get going. We had a planning grant that we gave to an organization here that was really a leader in the public health workforce space, and invested in them to develop a program. On the next slide, I'll give you a little bit of a sense of the program overview. Now, this is a program, as I said, we gave a planning grant to. They eventually submitted a Public Health AmeriCorps grant application and were awarded that. They also braided some other funding streams at the state level to support apprenticeship work. And so they really brought together a number of funding streams and partners to implement their program. And I will say that we are still in the first year of this program, so I won't be able to speak too much of the outcomes afterwards, but it's going really well so far. And so we're excited about it. To give you a sense of the program design, the apprenticeship was approved by Department of Labor, and it's a community health worker registered apprenticeship program. Members are placed in local public health agencies and doing a variety of different tasks and projects, everything from asset mapping and public health assessments, working on fentanyl response, communicable disease prevention are some of the examples. Just as Jeff in his overview mentioned, every AmeriCorps apprentice is provided a mentor at their host site. We have a partnership with Arapahoe Community College to provide some of the training. Members can be eligible to receive credit as well for that training be provided by Arapahoe Community College. So that's a sense of kind of at the high level of what the program is. On the next slide, I'll be brief. Jeff, I think, had laid out 7 different components. We have 5 components that we talk about that are critical to our apprenticeship. It's the on-the-job learning component, plus the related technical instruction. There is required to be that progressive wage increase that they talked about, the mentorship, and that the credential is really tied to the sector leaders in the industry itself. And so now that we've figured this out in the public health sector, we're super excited to bring it to many of those other sectors that were mentioned before. And then also on the next slide, I lay out a few of the advantages. For AmeriCorps, really that earn while they learn, component really we felt was speaking to what we were hearing from our member advisory committee, and they really did want to gain skills and be on a pathway. They weren't looking for some kind of gap year. They were looking for a step in exploring a career and gaining experiences. We do provide that increase, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. They receive at no cost the training, and they're supported throughout their term. And of course, everybody knows about the Siegel Education Award. Jeff already covered a lot of what employers and our host sites are really looking for and why they were so excited. And it's really to be able to work with those individuals around their exact specifications and that training component, getting to know the individuals and their future workforce and participate in that development, especially in a supported way. They are excited about a more diverse candidate pool that we feel like we're bringing to the table. And I think all the members are really excited about the program, and they come from all different walks of life. You know, one was a former CNA who wanted to get out of clinical work and wanted to really focus on public health at a higher level. Another, had a bachelor's degree in public health and wanted a first job and on the job training. So really people are coming from all over and they're excited. And I think that excitement increases productivity as well. From a state perspective on the next slide, our governor here in Colorado really has been championing innovative strategies to meet many different talent shortages in the state and is investing heavily in those. And so was really excited that we could really meet community needs through this program. And so for a state commission perspective, that was really important to us. Also, there is so many funding and Randy and Jeff talked about these funding streams available. When we braid these funding, it can really provide a lot more support for host sites to be able to participate in a program like this. Then on the next slide is kind of where we get into some of the sticky challenges of AmeriCorps. And I think it's already been, I think Kyra put it in the chat. We have a 20-page guide on a case study on how we kind of overcame some of those challenges, and we'd be happy to talk to folks more about it. The first one is, there's very clear language that, apprentices need to be employed, and National Service says this is not a job. And so really threading the needle on the language in our contracts and our member service agreements to recognize the language of both of these federal programs was important to us. I will also say that I believe that our registered apprenticeship was the second that was done, and the first one was actually negotiated by the AmeriCorps agency and the Department of Labor, and they really helped work through some of those sticky language challenges and got all the lawyers involved for a couple of years. And so we were able to stand on their shoulders as we were navigating some of those challenges. As I mentioned, and I believe Jeff mentioned as well, there needs to be a wage increase or a living allowance increase. We provide ours about halfway through the year. At that point, it's we categorize it as a cost of living increase, but it's really also recognizing the skills and competencies that they've developed that far into the apprenticeship. I saw some questions around the duration of the program. There's a couple different approaches to solve for the duration of the program. One is that AmeriCorps or apprentice sponsors are able to recognize prior learning experience and give some credit. The Mount Adams AmeriCorps program as well provides veterans some credit for their experience in the military. Some of our members are receiving education prior learning credits for some of the hours, but ours is a competency-based apprenticeship as well. So there's a couple of different ways. The other is you could actually utilize funding to begin some of the training exercises prior to enrollment in AmeriCorps and then enroll them in AmeriCorps once they begin their service. So you could front load some of that training work and get people oriented. And there's a lot of room, I think, for creativity in meeting those competencies and those hour requirements. And the last one is, one of our fears going into this was that we were going to hit the maximum on the 20% training maximum rule for AmeriCorps programs. And we frankly didn't even come close because so much of the learning is actually on the job and done through mentorship. There is training instruction, but I think ours is at about 140 hours right now. And we had up to, I want to say 320 hours that we could go. So we're fine on this program. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case when we bring this to other sectors, but that really wasn't the barrier that we feared it may be. So I would encourage leaning in on that piece. Now, all of these and more of the sticky kind of program alignment questions are on this guide. And so I encourage you to take a look at it. There's a chart, I think, beginning on page 8 that just kind of walks through what is like the AmeriCorps requirements, what's the apprenticeship requirement, and then how we kind of solve for it. So I encourage you to take a look at that. And then my last couple of bits here, and I'll wrap up. The next slide, I talk about some of the resources we provide. We have year-round planning grants that we provide. Every 3 months, we make decisions on planning grants, so we're always supporting program development. And we encouraged our existing programs that wanted to lean in on workforce development strategies to apply for a planning grant with us. So it's not just new programs. We also think there's a role for a lot of our existing portfolio to spend some time thinking about how they could change their model or add a new program component and utilize some of our planning grant funds for that. Of course, we provide operational grants, but as I said before, I think it's really important to think about braided funding. We talked about WIOA funding a little bit. There's a lot of other resources that Randy and Jeff pointed out that have gone to intermediaries or have gone to states, and that funding can be braided. Apprentices really need to be making at least minimum wage in that living allowance, the equivalent. And so I encourage the engagement of other state agencies and partners to find that money or some of the intermediaries. And then the last slide is we work extremely closely with our state agency. They have hired an amazing team. All those investments at the federal level going to the states have allowed them to expand their support. They give planning grants, they give scholarships that can support host sites, offsetting some of the costs. And these planning grants are called scale-up grants. And so we co-promoted an AmeriCorps planning grant alongside of their scale-up grants. And so we had a couple of existing programs apply for those scale-up grants, and at least one of them has received that so far. And then we also offer our planning grants to kind of figure out the AmeriCorps side of things. And so I'll end it there. I think my last slide is just that link that you guys have seen like a ton of times about where to find that guide, but I'd be happy to take questions if there are any.
Thanks, John. We have a couple questions and encourage folks to add questions in the chat or feel free to raise your hand and we can call on you. So a couple questions, I'll kind of combine these, John. So one from Megan and another from Amanda. Megan's asking, are members trained as community health workers prior to serving, or do they receive a certificate while serving? And then can you also address the term of hours that members are serving in that program?
Yeah. So all the members that are part of the apprenticeship program are receiving that certification, that apprenticeship, while they're serving. And so they're going to receive a certificate once they complete. I think at the state licensing level, there'll be many that sit for a public health worker exam as well. And that cost is being included for any of the members that want to sit for that. All of our members are 1,700-hour members, and I can't really imagine doing this as a fully registered apprenticeship at less than a 1,700-hour position. But I could be wrong. If someone has designed a program that is matching up with, say, another program that's a pre-apprenticeship, you might be able to get there. We haven't explored that, but all of our members are 1,700 hours, and some of those may end up serving or working another 100 hours, 200 hours after, if they don't have that prior learning experience coming in order to complete the apprenticeship component of it.
So we have a question from Amy. They've met with their workforce development office in Kentucky, and they emphasize that registered apprenticeship should receive the same benefits as an employee of the organization. So the question is kind of like, is that your experience? They have comparable benefits, but not identical. Part of the reason behind the differences is to reinforce the difference between members and employees.
Yeah. So our program is a new program, and so the status in the local public health agencies of our AmeriCorps apprentices really don't match anything else in the agencies, and so we didn't have a comparable benefits identical question that rose up for us. It was much more about meeting minimum benefit levels that we needed to figure out. And so, our members are receiving the max living allowance. We have made money available for housing subsidies that are paid outside of the living allowance as well, to really increase the support and benefits to the members. And then all of their fees and things like that related, and their training is all included as well. And so we didn't have that same issue. And I don't know if Randy or Jeff may be able to speak more globally to, that need to be identical to existing employees, but our unique status, I think, of these members really just lend itself to having to have a minimum benefit level, and not something identical to something that already existed.
And maybe, Amy, that's something we can collectively as a network explore further if that's something that is a hurdle that folks are coming up against. Anthony, can you speak to Serve Colorado's strategies to sustain funding for your registered apprenticeship programming once funding streams like the Scale Up grants are not available?
Yeah, and for us, those Scale Up grants are really planning grants. The scholarship dollars we anticipate for at least a few more years. We do think that there are a number of sectors that we can develop registered apprenticeships where the actual host sites can also contribute some funding. We're also having conversations with higher education, especially around some of their career-connected learning strategies, especially around workforce work study students, to see if we may be able to braid funding, especially with those work study students, to be able to increase the benefits that are allowable or funded by AmeriCorps alone. And so we're looking at a number of different funding streams right now, but I have to say that that there's a lot of funding at the state level for getting apprenticeships up and running. We have not explored WIOA yet. That is kind of the sustainable funding stream that's also out there, but frankly, I need to get a little bit more educated on what would be the member requirements related to meeting some of the WIOA standards around who that funding can serve and support. And that may speak to who we can recruit in the program if we go that route. But I've heard from a few other AmeriCorps programs that are tapping into WIOA that it may be a little bit of a complex funding stream, but it's well worth it from their perspective as well.
Any other questions for John, Randy, or Jeff? If not, I want to thank everyone for joining us for our webinar today. Big thanks to John, Randy, and Jeff for presenting today and sharing all this information. I want to encourage folks to, after this call, take some time to review the resources that were provided. We will share out all the links that were mentioned all the different reports. We'll share the recording and the slides from today, and want to encourage you all to explore reaching out to your state apprenticeship office, because I know some of the questions were a little bit dependent on kind of state requirements. So explore a little bit further around some of those state specific requirements as that might apply to your organization and program. So with that, thanks again to everyone for joining us. I hope you'll join us for our remaining 2 webinars, which will be on July 26th and August 2nd. We will be going a little bit deeper into this conversation around apprenticeship, and we'll be hearing from a couple of the intermediary apprenticeship organizations. So we'll hear from Urban Institute in July talking about youth apprenticeship. And then we will be talking about the Youth Apprenticeship Accelerator Program in August. Thanks again, everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.